Welcome, ministry partners, to Agape Now. I'm Pastor Darren Johnson from Agape House at San Diego State University. And with us today again, as always, is Antoine Cummins, our engagement coordinator. Antoine, hello.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
And also a special guest today with us is Pastor Sarah Sumner Eisenbraun, who's a member of our Agape board and also pastor at St. Andrew Lutheran Church. Pastor Sarah, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And Antoine's going to catch us up on this video series, what's going on, and take it away, Antoine.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of questions about what we've been up to at Agape. And, obviously with the pandemic and everything that's going on, we can't really explain or project what the future might hold for us. And obviously a lot of things have changed since, March? But we figured our best bet was just to keep you updated on what we're doing at the current moment. So thus, this video series, Agape Now, where we try to offer you a window into the community life here at Agape. Since the beginning of the fall semester, we've been trying to find creative ways to do what we do best, which is community, relationship building. And unfortunately, we're not able to meet in person because that was a huge part of our ministry at Agape, right? Our Wednesday night dinners, the random drop-ins from students, being able to check in with them, see how they're doing, identify any needs and ways that Agape could assist them. And it's been a challenge virtually, but like I said, we've tried to find creative ways to do that. So we have these monthly virtual check-ins where you just show up, let us know how you're doing. And then we also have a couple other programs, virtual cooking classes, book discussions. We had a Black and Pink writing party, which you probably heard about in our other episode from the students. It's been a lot, but it's exciting. Keeps us on our toes. And we have a couple more fun events coming up for the remaining of the semester, particularly in the month of November. The students wanted us to get into our core value of justice and mercy. Some of the main ways that we stay connected with the students now is the group meet and obviously our social media pages. So if you want to follow us here on Instagram and there on Facebook, or if you know any students who could benefit from being a part of our community, feel free to let us know. Obviously, you can always email us and contact us at this information here.
I really appreciate the organization and caring that you've brought to keep our community connected. So yeah, going with the students' theme of justice and mercy, it's been a creative tension and an adventure as we explore how we respond to new challenges like the pandemic and so forth. On both sides of that, right? You've got the mercy side where you have urgent and pressing needs that are raised by the community, but then you also have the systemic stuff, the justice side of this, and how do we not just be putting on Band-Aids all the time, but also be looking at, okay, how are people getting wounded and what can we do about that? So holding those two together is one of the core values for us that inspires a lot of that creativity. Thanks again, Pastor Sarah, for your strong partnership with Agape House, from yourself, but also from St. Andrew Lutheran Church, who are huge leaders among all of our ministry partners in committing both funds and leadership and just walking closely with Agape House for many years. So thanks for that and for your personal investment in campus ministry too. What's that like for you?
Yeah, when I came to St. Andrews, I was really grateful that Darren approached me early on to say that Agape House wanted to continue to have a strong relationship with St. Andrews as a congregation. And I feel really grateful that I'm in a congregation that is so deeply committed to all kinds of ministries, Agape House in particular. I'm grateful that I get to serve in this way on behalf of my congregation, and then also to hopefully continue to keep that relationship strong between Agape House and St. Andrews too.
So we've been through a lot this year. It's been quite a year, and it seems like in the reflecting and framing and the news and otherwise, we often think about, what is 2020? It's this weird confluence of pandemic and election year, and it's been so contentious and anxious, and here we are now heading into the Advent season. For me, it's like catch my breath season. It's like, okay, let's get our bearings again. That's what Advent is to me. It's my favorite season of the church year. And mercy and justice to me are great connections with Advent, right?
Yeah,
Think about the state of the world and how we're involved with it and how God is involved with it. So what comes to you as you reflect on this year heading into this new church year with Advent?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a very surreal thing to me that this is the time of year we're in already. I think normally that preparation time for Advent and thinking about what it means, thinking about how we want to connect more deeply with what Advent represents for us as people of faith is something that I love. And I haven't been able to do that really, because I think in the same way I like to, because I agree, and I think it's the same way at Agape House, where there are so many needs in our communities we're just responding to kind of one at a time. And that's kind of been my experience of this whole season of life, especially since March, is that, it's hard to imagine, and I think Antoine said this well, it's hard to imagine, well, what does the short-term future look like for us? But, I think to step back and say, but what can I do in the next few hours, the next day, right? And focus on doing that. So, yeah, and Advent, as we all know, is this time of waiting and anticipation. And so I think it's going to take on new theological, spiritual meaning and depth for hopefully all of us right now, as we think about it, because we have definitely been living in a season of waiting and wondering.
Yeah, and I've been looking forward to this season in my own family life. My father just passed away just a couple of weeks ago, and so it was a really important disruption in our life and routine to stop and realize the preciousness of each day that we have together.
Yeah.
To find extended time to be together and just spend time together. It's a lot of what we do at Agape House, where normally the space is open, people drop in and they hang out for as long as they like, and things can happen there spontaneously. And now things have to be scheduled, right? If we need to go on screen together or meet in person, it's not just a drop-in life anymore. So it's kind of forced us to be a little bit more intentional. And maybe for me, that means slowing down. I feel like this time of scheduling everything and pressures and urgency has accelerated things, and yet I'm much less productive. So like, how do I do what makes sense for the day? How are we responsive to students and engaging them? Because it's a busy time for them too, with midterms and finals are just around the corner. So just taking time to tune into each other.
Yeah.
In a conversation.
I think that is a struggle. And yet I think a lot of us, I think you and I have talked about this, Darren, are stepping back and wondering why it is that it's our productivity that somehow measures our value or what we contribute in the world. And I think we're kind of being called to question that a little bit more right now. And that's not a bad thing. It can be a painful thing. It can be a hard thing, but I do think it does uncover some justice issues when we step back and kind of peel that layer back of going, why do we think this is how we hold value in the world? And why do we hold other people's value based around their productivity or the things we think that they contribute that are valuable? And I'm appreciative, as hard as it is, I'm appreciative for the fact that maybe we're calling some of that into question right now.
Yeah. Well, I know I need to. I got the news from my mom that my dad had passed on a Friday, and I already had a flight booked because I was planning to go visit. But I brought that up, and I kind of rushed in there with my former search and rescue hat on, and like, okay, what can I help with? What can I do?
Yeah.
I got there, and I realized I just need to sit and cry and listen and remember and talk, and it just day after day of that is what I needed to happen. And I'm meeting more students who are in crisis too. They've lost jobs. They're worried about next month's rent or what's going to happen if the eviction moratorium runs out. And they just need to know that a community is around them. They're not alone in this. Somebody's with them. They don't have to have all the answers, but they need people to lean on. So that's kind of one of the pieces for me of Advent is just that breathing space to reflect on where we've been, imagine where we're going, or wonder about it. Maybe it's not all mapped out, but we're evolving. We're in the midst of this. We have a building project that somehow is continuing to be designed and move forward toward construction, we hope. And it's been a long process.
I was thinking about the building project this morning. I really was. Before you texted me, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what a journey we've been on as a board and as staff with this dream and vision for this space. And now it's like, okay, we don't want to just drop that dream and vision entirely, but it definitely has changed the way we are going about it.
Yeah, the pace is not what we initially mapped out. Process with the city is slow, and people have been wonderful and responsive in our capital campaign to finance the project. The church is excited about helping us finance it. So it's still a lively vision, compelling vision, and yet we're having to reimagine things too about like safety of residents. Right, we're thinking differently about these things already on a fundamental level. And yeah, this is going to be a long process. The pandemic isn't just blowing over. We're looking at the next year or two being still major adjustments and campus life. Campus is pretty quiet, like a ghost town most of the time. But there's thousands of students who are still studying, and so engaging them means a different form of ministry, a different form of outreach.
Yeah, and I think, this experience is going to shape so many young people's lives and maybe even shift their sense of vocation, their sense of calling, their sense and understanding of community. And there's so much of that we don't know what that means yet, but I think I'm glad that Agape House is staying engaged and doing that listening and doing that supporting. To encourage that prophetic voice that might be coming from the young people who are living in this reality and stepping back and saying, I wonder if this changes what my future is going to look like or the way that I want to live into my sense of calling. So I think it's going to be really interesting and potentially even exciting to see the way this has, again, I don't want to diminish at all the like challenge or pain or death or suffering. That is all very real. But I also think like theologically, we believe that it is through suffering that new life comes as well. And so I'm curious to see what new life comes eventually in God's timing through all this, and the way that, young people who have had to struggle and suffer because of what we're living in, what they're going to do with what they've learned and how they've grown because of it. Maybe that's like idealistic thinking, but I want to believe that there's going to be some of that in the future.
Well, it is happening. So thanks for raising it. We don't just meet students in crisis, but it's funny you mentioned it because I've had increasing conversations with students who want to talk about that very thing. They want to explore vocation, and they want to think about changing their life direction.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of what they're going through or what we're going through together right now. They're thinking differently about their purpose.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before, but I didn't grow up going to church. It wasn't a part of my family and even like really my extended family too much. And it was in college and through a campus ministry that I felt a draw into a Christian community. And so, that's why I really value campus ministries. I think they're really important, not just because we're trying to like crank out some like cookie cutter Lutheran, but because we're trying to, empower and support a whole person who is growing and learning and figuring out their identity. And to say that a Christian community can be a space that encourages you in that journey is just something that meant so much to me, obviously, because now I'm ordained and working in the church, but it's not even for that purpose. It's really out of love and care for people, and how valuable and important that is. And so that's why another reason why I love to support what Agape House does is because I really appreciate and value the model and the values that you all hold, and that we, I guess, as a board member too, in trying to engage and connect and support all the things that Agape House does at San Diego State and beyond.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Would you care to say any more about what that connection was like for you during your college years?
Well, yeah, it's just, it's a little bit different because I was at a Lutheran college, and I didn't go there because it was Lutheran. I didn't really know that much about the Lutheran tradition at all. But the college that I went to, which was St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota, they required like a Religion 101 class. And so it kind of started there for me because it was just, I loved learning about religious history and different theologies and things. But then the other thing that impacted me was I'm a musician and I love to sing, and I was singing in the choirs there, and we had to go to chapel. It was required to go to chapel and to be a part of in certain years, the choirs that I was in. And so because I think 1 year at least I was in the chapel choir. So we had to be there because we were the chapel choir. And then it was the preaching and music that I experienced there. That was my first time ever meeting and hearing a woman preacher. And that was very formative for me. And I thought about it later. I never actually had like a conversation with Pastor Koenig, who is now passed away. She had cancer and died young. And that was very sad and hard for the St. Olaf community. I never actually talked to her. Her just being in the room was enough. Just being who she was enough to shape me and impact me. So stuff like that is so important, and we can't often measure that kind of thing. So
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously at San Diego State we don't have required chapel services, right? So it has to be a personal connection, and I'm taking from what you said too that sometimes what people need to see is a different embodiment of what they assume they know that they really don't have time for, right? That, for example, an inclusive church or a church where women are equally empowered in leadership and or getting there. It's a process, right?
It is a process.
Yeah. And that's kind of our challenge too, right? Because if we throw up a sign that says Lutheran, there's very few people who will just come knocking because of that. We have to be authentic in a different way where a label doesn't do the work for us.
Yeah, and I think, and I agree. I think people aren't going to come because of the name Lutheran. In fact, I mean, I think we need to own and love our Lutheran identity, but at the same time, there often are with so many people negative associations with a title or a sign or whatever. And so that's why that embodiment is so important. And I do think Agape House does that in a really important way. Again, because you're not saying, come here so that we can mold you into who we think you're supposed to be. To me, that's antithetical to the gospel. So, and that's something that I have enjoyed in the times that I've been able to be present when students are there, which hasn't been as much as I wanted, but the times that I have been able to, there is very much a sense of that. And I've been really, there was, I'm sure it's been around a while, but there's a kind of like a poem by Mickey Scott Bay Jones that I've been returning to a lot, especially in these times. And it's about how it's this invitation to brave space. And if people are interested in that, I'm sure we could get this for them. But one of the things she talks about is that no space can really ever be a totally safe space, but we can together create a brave space. And I think that is one way of wording the community that Agape House is trying to develop, is a brave space. And I think, we're trying to, and as we're talking about justice and mercy, that's a huge part of that, that we don't step back and say like, oh, we're the church, we're not going to talk about this. It's like the opposite. We turn around and say, we're going to dive head into some of these difficult conversations because we are people of faith and because we value, conversation. We value listening. We want to grow and learn about each other. So.
Oh, thanks for that. Yeah, that connects with our core value rooted in faith, which for us is not starting with a belief system. It starts with a trusting posture toward others, a courageous way of entering into with humility, with others, realizing I too expect to be changed, right? I'm not just projecting my will onto the world, but I'm also being transformed through the interaction, through the questions that maybe I hadn't thought of that challenge me. Yeah, that's what we hope that we're exemplifying. And I think our partnership with other churches has helped us in that respect too. And we see a value of partnering with the Episcopal Diocese of San Diego,
Mhm.
Presbyterian Church, and others who have come alongside us in this work, because I think they've learned that they can trust we're not dominating with a system. We're truly interested in relationship.
Yeah. And that's something that I value too. Again, it's like I think some of the historical models were that like campus ministries were meant to like crank out good Lutheran members of congregations or something. And that's not at all a value that I would hold. Of course we want like good quote Lutheran members, but I think, we have to redefine what that means compared to historically the way that we thought about it. And so I like that's being kind of questioned and dismantled at a certain level.
Well, and I think, however people are acquainted with Christianity, they at least know about Jesus. He didn't seem to be asking for money or for people to join an organization. He was transforming the world.
Yeah. And I'm not saying like don't join a church, obviously. I think there's a lot of value in that. It's for what reason, I think to step back, and for St. Andrews, it's been really interesting to see the way that we've had a different outreach and presence in our community right now than we had before. And that's been really meaningful. I think we've grown as a result of that. And we have people who have found us who have decided to join St. Andrews and become members who've never actually physically been to a worship service before on our site. They've only participated online. And that's like a whole new reality that we were kind of forced into because of the pandemic. And yet I'm so grateful now that we're making those connections, even though we weren't it wasn't something we were planning on,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's been good.
Yeah, it's fun to see that with students too, how they'll initially be connected through a friend or some other girl on campus, and kind of dip their toe in and realize, wow, they're welcome as they are. You don't have to become something else to join. You don't have to all agree to be part of a community. In fact, the community is richer because of differences in perspective and even belief system, and identity. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say that, that's something we're working on as our congregation too right now is we have we're kind of working through what we're calling like our welcoming initiative, because we are kind of stepping back and saying, have there been times in faith communities, which this is true, there just are, where people are asked to leave certain parts of themselves at the door when they come in, whether that's their gender identity or their culture, maybe around their issues of race, them being whatever race or ethnicity they come from. Are we asking them to leave that at the door? Or is it people living with a disability or mental illness? We don't want to see that here, right? And so for us as a congregation, we're stepping back and going, how are we complicit in some of these practices, perhaps unknowingly? And how can we change or adapt so that we are a place when we say we want people to be welcome here, we really mean it, and we've done the work to get there. And so we're a part of that. And I think it's hard, but really holy work. And I think Agape House, I'm appreciative that we can learn from some of the ways Agape House is already on that journey and has been for a long time, and is a model for Christian community that is shaped differently than what historically we might expect. And so I think that's really wonderful, and it's something that I'm excited about that I think can lead to an even deeper partnership, not only with our congregation, but hopefully others too.
Oh, good. Yeah. More of that interaction. I know it keeps me jazzed to show up for it, because the community is continuing to grow me. Students wrote our welcome statement,
I know, I loved it too. It was so good.
Yeah. It's so the language that connects and makes sense to them is how the gospel gets communicated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Pastor Sarah, for reflecting with us on this and strengthening our cooperation together with St. Andrew Lutheran Church. Thanks again for your leadership on the board. And Antoine is going to connect us a little bit with ways that our extended community can be involved in supporting students. So I'd like to welcome him back to this. Antoine?
Hi again.
Just a quick thank you to Pastor Sarah. I know Darren's great, but we always wonder at Agape, who are behind the scenes helping shape this vision and hold us accountable. And just hearing you talk and share some of your perspectives was personally, obviously, it was very healing, but also exciting. So just thank you for your leadership, for your wisdom. I can't wait to take back so much of what you shared to some of the students and see ways that, they can connect with it. But yeah, like Pastor Darren said, it is different, right? We don't have the living room space. We don't have our Wednesday night dinners. So trying to figure out and stay on top of student needs has definitely been a challenge, but a couple of things have been reoccurring in terms of, what students are leaning on us for. And thus, we're going to be, asking you guys to continue your support so that we can lean on you to make this happen. Because without you guys, without the board, without the support, without our partners and resources, none of this would be possible. So the three biggest things that we've noticed is definitely food insecurity. That's always been a problem. But students have definitely been requesting these emergency food packs that we put together. And the food packs that we put together consist of, soups, pastas, beans, instant meals, just something that can get students through whatever situation that they might be occurring. And your support makes that possible. Also, rent assistance. Emergency situations come up for some of our community members where there's just ambiguity about where they'll be sleeping for the next couple of weeks. And Pastor Darren usually takes point on those cases, but having the resources available to meet those student needs means a world of a difference to a lot of the students, especially now more than ever. And then the third thing, obviously this has been, a pressing concern in our society for far too long, but mental health resources and referrals. A couple students reach out to us as that connection point. So those three areas is where Agape shows up and definitely meets the need of our community. So again, as students continue to lean on us, we'll be leaning on you guys to make this possible. So thank you again. And I'll flip it back over to Darren to tell us a little bit about the specifics, the logistics about how you can become supporting members or step up your support.
Yeah, thanks, Antoine. So as we've seen increasing requests for emergency assistance, area congregations have been very helpful in making that possible. And we're hoping to streamline that process because sometimes people have a need today rather than waiting a week or two to go through a process. And so we're hoping to build a fund with that. And that's where undesignated contributions are really helpful because they give us maximum flexibility in supporting our students in the way that they need. Sometimes it's an internship, right, that they could work with us on campus. Sometimes they just need help with 1 month rent or food, and it's a variety of things. Sometimes they need mental health support. So community referrals, mental health providers who are able to offer their services at a reduced fee. Those kinds of things are very helpful. So we really want to invite the wider community resources into this too. And that includes Pastor Sarah and St. Andrew Lutheran Church. So Pastor Sarah, if folks would like to follow you or St. Andrew Lutheran Church, how could they connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, St. Andrews, it's really, right now, we're most active on Facebook. So we live stream all of our services on Facebook Live. We upload them later to YouTube. So St. Andrews Lutheran Church, San Diego, I think it's St. Andrews capital. So St. Andrews with an S and capital S, capital D for San Diego is the easiest way to find us on Facebook. And then you can track me down through there, as well as Instagram. So that's the best ways probably to connect, and we would love to have you and see you be a part in whatever way you can.
Yeah, thanks. I've been in on some of those services. They're really wonderful what you all are doing. I'm amazed at the creativity of the church responding to this.
Yeah, it's been a learning process.
It goes down the road, aren't we?
I know, like you figure out one thing and then you're like, oh, okay, well that like didn't work. But in our case, the thing that has worked the best consistently is when we have a blow up T-Rex costume that we often will just bring in to worship sometimes just because it needs to happen. So those are the kinds of things that we try to have fun. We try to talk about serious issues and engage, but also, you know, provide some space of, you know, laughter and joy too, as much as we can, because we need all of it. So
really a gifted and wonderful community, and that has a lot to do with your leadership. So thanks a lot again, Pastor Sarah, for being part of this. Folks out there, please keep connected with us through Instagram, Facebook, and our YouTube channel where these videos are posted. And we look forward to you joining us again. Take care.
See you.
Bye.